He didn't leave because she cheated. He left because she didn't come home. And somehow that silence said everything. Seattle wore its usual grey like a second skin that morning, low clouds pressing down against glass towers, rain whispering against windows, as if the city itself knew how to keep secrets. Inside a high-rise apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, Nathan Cole stood barefoot in the kitchen, staring at a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. He hadn't taken a sip. The digital clock on the oven blinked 6:12 a.m. Amelia still wasn't home. He didn't check his phone, not because he didn't care, but because he already knew there were no messages waiting for him, no missed calls, no explanations. That more than anything felt deliberate. Nathan leaned against the marble counter arms, crossed eyes fixed on nothing in particular. His reflection stared back faintly from the dark window, a man composed, controlled, and quietly unraveling. Hours earlier, he had heard the elevator ding down the hall, footsteps passing, doors opening and closing, but not theirs. He hadn't moved then either. The apartment itself was immaculate, like something out of an architectural magazine. Clean lines, neutral tones, curated art pieces that spoke more about status than personality. Amelia had designed most of it. She believed in presentation, Nathan once told a colleague, even at home. At the time it sounded like admiration. Now it felt like a diagnosis. The night before replayed in fragments. Amelia standing near the doorway adjusting her coat. "I might be late," she had said casually, scrolling through her phone. "Client dinner. It's important." Nathan nodded from the couch, laptop open but untouched. What time, he asked. She hesitated just for a second. "I don't know. Don't wait up." And that was it. No kiss goodbye, no lingering glance, just the soft click of the door closing behind her. Back in the present, Nathan finally reached for his phone. The screen lit up. No notifications. He opened their message thread. The last text was from him. "Drive safe." Sent at 7:42 p.m. Read. No reply. Nathan exhaled slowly, setting the phone back down with deliberate care, as if any sudden movement might crack something fragile inside him. It wasn't the first time. Late nights had become normal over the past few months. Work, Amelia always said, networking, clients, and Nathan had believed her. Or at least, he had chosen not to question it, because questioning meant confrontation, and confrontation meant risking the illusion they had both worked so hard to maintain. A memory surfaced uninvited. 3 months ago, Amelia laughing at something on her phone, a softness in her expression Nathan hadn't seen directed at him in a long time. "Who's that?" he had asked lightly. "Just work," she replied too quickly. He hadn't pressed further, but something had shifted that day. A quiet awareness, a crack beneath the surface. Nathan walked to the window, watching as the sky slowly brightened into a pale, indifferent blue. The city was waking up. Cars moving, people rushing, life continuing, as if nothing had changed, but something had. He could feel it, not in a dramatic, explosive way, but in the subtle, irreversible way that only truth could exist. At 6:47 a.m., the elevator dinged again. Nathan's body tensed instinctively. Footsteps, closer this time, then a pause, right outside the door. The sound of keys. His heart didn't race. It didn't need to, because whatever was about to happen, he already knew. The door opened. Amelia stepped in quietly, as if trying not to wake someone. Her hair slightly disheveled, makeup faded, coat hanging loosely off one shoulder. She froze when she saw him. Nathan stood by the window, hands in his pockets, watching her. Neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, heavy, unforgiving. "Hey," Amelia said finally, her voice softer than usual. "Careful." Nathan tilted his head slightly. "Long night." She nodded, avoiding his eyes. "Yeah, clients." It ran late. Another silence. Nathan studied her, not accusingly, not angrily, just observing, as if seeing her clearly for the first time. "Did you eat?" she asked, gesturing vaguely toward the kitchen. It was such a normal question, so painfully normal. Nathan almost smiled. "Yeah," he said. "A lie?" Amelia shifted uncomfortably. "I'm gonna shower," she muttered, already moving past him. Nathan didn't stop her, didn't question her, didn't ask where she had been, or who she had been with, because in that moment he understood something with absolute clarity. It wasn't about where she had been, it was about where she no longer was. Nathan turned back to the window as the bathroom door closed behind her. The sound of running water filled the apartment, steady, uninterrupted, like everything else in their lives, on the surface. He looked at the city one last time, then quietly he made a decision. The night had started like any other, predictable, polished, quiet. Seattle's skyline shimmered beyond the glass walls of the apartment, reflections dancing across steel and water like a carefully staged illusion. Inside, everything remained untouched, perfectly arranged furniture, soft ambient lighting, the low hum of a city that never truly slept. Nathan Cole sat on the edge of the couch, his laptop open, a spreadsheet glowing on the screen. Numbers, deadlines, projects, none of it mattered. His eyes hadn't moved in minutes. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual, 9:18 p.m. Amelia should have been home by now, or at least she should have texted. He reached for his phone, paused, then set it back down. Not yet. There was a kind of dignity in not asking, a fragile kind, but it was all he had left. Nathan leaned back, staring at the ceiling. He tried to remember the last time they had a real conversation. Not about schedules, not about work, not about logistics. Something real, something honest. Nothing came. By 10:07 p.m., the city outside had grown quieter. The traffic thinned, headlights stretching into longer, lonelier lines. Nathan stood up and walked to the kitchen, opened the fridge, closed it. He wasn't hungry. He poured himself a glass of water, took a sip, then left it on the counter untouched. Everything felt unfinished. At 10:42 p.m., his phone lit up. A notification. His chest tightened just slightly. He picked it up. An email. Not her. Nathan let out a slow breath through his nose, placing the phone face down this time, deliberately. He knew this feeling. Not panic, not anger. Something quieter, something heavier. Recognition. A memory slipped in uninvited. 2 weeks ago, Amelia standing by the mirror adjusting her earrings. "You've been distant," Nathan had said. It wasn't accusatory, just observational. She met his eyes through the reflection. "I've just been busy, Nate. You know how it is?" He nodded. Of course he knew. They were both busy. That had always been the excuse. Back in the present, Nathan walked to the window again. Rain had started falling soft at first, then steady coating the glass in thin, distorted streaks. The city blurred, lights bending into something abstract, unreal. By 11:30 p.m. something inside him shifted. Not a breaking point, not yet, but a quiet realization settling into place, like a piece of a puzzle he had been avoiding. He picked up his phone again, opened Amelia's contact. His thumb hovered over the call button. Just one tap, that's all it would take. A simple question. "Where are you?" But the question felt wrong. Not because he didn't deserve an answer, but because he already had one, just not in words. Nathan lowered the phone slowly, set it down, walked away. Midnight came and went without ceremony. The apartment remained silent, too silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed distant now. He turned off the lights in the living room, leaving only the faint glow from the city outside, sat down in the dark, and waited. There's a specific kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from realizing the person you share your life with is no longer part of it. At 12:46 a.m., Nathan finally allowed himself to think it. Not fully, not completely, but enough. She's not coming home. He didn't say it out loud, didn't need to. The truth existed quietly like everything else between them. Another memory surfaced, 3 months ago. A name. Lucas. He had seen it flash across her phone screen once, just for a second. No last name, no context, just a message. "Can't wait to see you tonight." Nathan had looked away before she noticed, pretended not to see, pretended not to understand. Now, sitting alone in the dark, that moment returned with perfect clarity. Not as suspicion, but as confirmation. 1:30 a.m. The rain intensified, tapping harder against the windows. Nathan stood up and walked to the bedroom. The bed was still perfectly made, her side untouched, cold. He sat down on the edge, ran a hand across the empty space beside him. It felt foreign. He lay back, slowly staring at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come, not even close. Time passed differently after that, not in hours, in thoughts, fragments, questions he refused to ask, answers he refused to deny. By 3:12 a.m., Nathan got up again, walked back into the living room, picked up his phone, opened their messages, read them from the top, scrolling back through months of conversations, shorter replies, delayed responses, missed moments, ignored attempts. It was all there. He just hadn't wanted to see it. Nathan let out a quiet breath, almost a laugh, not because anything was funny, but because of how obvious it had been. At 4:05 a.m. he made coffee. This time he drank it. Bitter, strong, necessary. The sky outside began to lighten, barely noticeable at first. A soft gray replacing the deep black of night. Morning was coming. whether he was ready or not. Nathan stood by the window, cup in hand, watching the city slowly wake up again. People would go to work, meetings would happen, lives would continue, as if nothing had changed. But everything had. He didn't feel rage, didn't feel the urge to confront, to accuse, to demand. What he felt was something far more final: clarity. By the time the clock read 5:58 a.m., Nathan had already decided. He wasn't going to call her. He wasn't going to ask. He wasn't going to wait for explanations wrapped in half-truths and careful lies. Because this silence, this absence, this night that stretched too long without her, it told him everything he needed to know. Nathan set the empty cup down on the counter, walked slowly toward the bedroom. The suitcase in the closet waited quietly, unassuming, neutral. He opened it, for the first time, not as a thought, but as an action. Outside, the first light of dawn broke across the horizon, soft, unforgiving, inevitable. And inside that apartment, Nathan Cole began to leave. Dawn arrived without warmth. The light that slipped through the glass walls of the apartment was pale, almost indifferent, casting long, quiet shadows across the floor. Seattle stretched awake beneath it, unaware that somewhere high above a life was being quietly dismantled. Nathan Cole stood in the bedroom, suitcase open on the bed. He didn't rush. There was no urgency in his movements, no panic, no hesitation. Just a steady, deliberate rhythm, as if he had already rehearsed this moment in his mind long before it became real. A few shirts, dark jeans, a jacket, essentials, nothing sentimental. He paused once, holding a watch Amelia had given him 3 years ago on their anniversary. The leather strap was worn now, softened by time. For a second, his fingers tightened around it. Then he placed it gently back into the drawer. Not everything needed to be taken. Some things belonged to a version of him that no longer existed. The apartment remained silent. The sound of running water from the bathroom had stopped. Amelia hadn't come out yet, or maybe she had fallen asleep. The thought passed through Nathan's mind without resistance. It didn't matter. He zipped the suitcase closed. The sound felt louder than it should have. Final. Nathan walked into the kitchen, his eyes scanning the space one last time. Every detail was familiar. Every corner held a memory, but none of it felt like home anymore. He reached for a piece of paper. Not from his office, not from anything formal, just a simple sheet torn cleanly from a notebook. Ordinary, unremarkable, exactly what this moment needed. He stood there for a long time, pen in hand, not because he didn't know what to write, but because there was too much he could say, too many questions, too many truths, too many wounds that had never been spoken out loud. Where were you? Who is he? When did it start? Did you ever love me the same way? The questions surfaced one by one, then faded just as quickly, because suddenly they all felt irrelevant. Nathan exhaled slowly, lowered the pen to the paper, and began to write. It didn't take long, just a few lines, no anger, no accusations, no dramatic farewell. When he finished, he read it once, then folded it carefully, not out of habit, but out of respect for what they had been. He placed the note on the kitchen counter, right where she would see it. No hiding, no theatrics, just truth. The apartment remained still, unaware, or perhaps choosing not to react. Nathan picked up his suitcase, walked toward the door, paused. His hand rested on the handle. For a moment, just a moment, something inside him pulled back. Not doubt, not regret, something softer. A memory trying to hold on. Amelia laughing on the balcony, wind in her hair, late nights talking about nothing, the way she used to say his name like it meant something. Nathan closed his eyes, let the memory pass through him, and then let it go. He opened the door, stepped out, closed it quietly behind him. No slammed doors, no raised voices, no final confrontation echoing through empty walls, just silence. And somehow that silence carried more weight than anything he could have said. Inside the apartment, time moved forward without him. Minutes passed. Then the soft sound of a door opening. Amelia stepped out of the bedroom, her hair still damp from the shower, wrapped loosely in a robe. "Nathan," she called lightly. No answer. She frowned slightly, walking into the living room. The space felt different. She couldn't explain it. Not yet. Her eyes moved toward the kitchen. And then she saw it. The note. At first, she didn't react, didn't panic, didn't assume, because there was no reason to. Not yet. She walked over slowly, each step measured, uncertain. Her fingers reached for the folded paper, hesitated just briefly before opening it. Her eyes scanned the words, once, then again, slower this time, and something inside her shifted. There were no accusations, no anger, no mention of betrayal, just a quiet, devastating truth written in the simplest way possible. Amelia, I didn't leave because of last night. I left because I've been gone for a long time, and I think you have too. There's nothing left here that either of us is willing to say out loud, so I won't ask you to explain, and I won't pretend not to understand. Take care of yourself. Nathan. The words didn't shout. They didn't accuse. They didn't demand. And that was exactly why they hurt. Amelia's hand tightened slightly around the paper. Her breathing slowed, not panicked, not yet, but unsteady. She looked around the apartment again, this time really looking. The suitcase was gone, his shoes, his jacket, small things, but enough. He hadn't just stepped out, he had left. No, she whispered under her breath. Not denial, not fully, but something close to it. She picked up her phone, opened their messages, nothing new, no call, no explanation. Just the note. Amelia stared at it again, her mind racing now, trying to catch up, trying to understand something that felt too quiet to be real. He didn't yell, he didn't ask, he didn't fight for it. He just walked away, and somehow that hurt more than anything else. Amelia sank slowly into the chair beside the counter, the note still in her hand. Her reflection stared back at her from the darkened window, familiar, but not quite the same. For the first time, she realized something she hadn't allowed herself to see before. This wasn't just about one night. It was about everything that came before it, everything she ignored, everything she chose not to feel. And now there was no one left to pretend with. Outside, the sun rose higher into the sky, cold, bright, unforgiving. And inside that silent apartment, Nathan's absence said everything. The apartment felt too quiet, not the kind of quiet that brought peace, but the kind that exposed everything you had been trying not to hear. Amelia Cole sat at the kitchen counter, the note still in her hand, her fingers slightly crumpling the edges without realizing it. The words blurred and sharpened again as her eyes moved across them for what must have been the 10th time. No anger, no accusations, just distance. And somehow that distance felt more suffocating than any confrontation she could have imagined. She stood up abruptly, the chair scraping lightly against the floor. No, she whispered to herself, shaking her head as if rejecting something invisible. This is just dramatic. He'll come back. The words sounded hollow the moment they left her mouth. Nathan wasn't dramatic. He never had been. Amelia walked quickly to the bedroom. The closet doors were half open. She didn't need to look closely to know. His side was lighter, empty in a way that felt intentional, not rushed, not impulsive. This doesn't make sense, she muttered more urgently now. Her mind searched for something, anything, that could explain this without forcing her to face what she already knew. But the truth didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments, memories, moments she had carefully ignored. Lucas. The name surfaced like a quiet confession. 6 months ago, a networking event downtown, one of those polished, predictable evenings filled with curated conversations and forced laughter. Amelia had been there representing her firm, dressed in a tailored black dress, her confidence as sharp as the skyline behind her. That was where she met him. Lucas Grant. He wasn't the loudest man in the room. Didn't need to be. There was something controlled about him, intentional. The way he spoke, the way he listened, it felt different from the usual empty exchanges she had grown used to. "You don't look like you're enjoying this," he had said, standing beside her with a glass of whiskey in hand. Amelia glanced at him, surprised by the honesty. "Is it that obvious?" He smirked slightly. "Only if you're paying attention." That was the beginning. Not dramatic, not reckless, just different. Back in the present, Amelia pressed her hands against the edge of the dresser, her reflection staring back at her. "You were just talking," she whispered. At first it was true. Late-night messages, conversations that drifted away from work. He asked questions Nathan hadn't asked in months. "Are you happy? Do you ever feel like you're just performing your life?" Amelia had laughed the first time, deflected, but he didn't push, he just listened. And somehow that made it worse. Weeks passed, then months. The messages became calls. The calls became meetings. Just coffee, just drinks, just one more time. "You're married," Amelia had said once, her voice quieter than she intended. Lucas didn't look away. "I'm aware. That doesn't bother you." He took a slow sip of his drink. "It depends," he replied calmly. "Does it bother you?" Amelia didn't answer, because she didn't know, or maybe she didn't want to. Back in the apartment, she let out a shaky breath, her chest tightening. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said aloud, as if someone were there to hear her, as if saying it might make it true. The first time it crossed the line hadn't felt like a decision. It felt like something inevitable, a quiet surrender to something she had already been leaning toward. A hotel room, dim lights, no expectations, no history, no weight. Lucas had touched her like he saw her, Not as a role, not as a responsibility, but as someone wanted. And in that moment, she hadn't thought about Nathan. Not really. That was the part she couldn't escape now. Amelia covered her face with her hands, her breathing uneven. "Stop," she whispered. "Just stop." But the memories didn't listen. Nathan sitting across from her at dinner weeks ago. Quiet, present, but distant. "Everything okay?" he had asked. She nodded without hesitation. Of course, a lie so easy it scared her. And he had accepted it. That was the worst part. He had accepted it. Back in the present, Amelia grabbed her phone from the counter. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrolled to Lucas's name. She stared at it, hesitated, then pressed call. It rang once, twice. Then Amelia. His voice was calm, steady, unchanged. She swallowed hard. He left. A pause. Not long, but long enough. "What do you mean?" Lucas asked, though his tone suggested he already understood. "He's gone." Her voice caught slightly. He left a note. Another silence. And Lucas said, just one word. Amelia blinked, thrown off by the lack of reaction. And she repeated, her voice sharpening. "That's it. That's all you're going to say." Lucas exhaled softly. "What do you want me to say, Amelia?" Something inside her tightened. "I don't know." Something. Anything. There was a shift in his tone now. Subtle, but undeniable. This was always a possibility. The words landed harder than she expected. "A possibility," she echoed. "You make it sound like this was just expected." Lucas didn't respond immediately, and in that silence Amelia felt something crack. "You said you understood me," she said, her voice lower now. "You said you saw me." "I did." Lucas replied evenly. "Then why does it feel like none of this matters to you?" Another pause, longer this time. "Because it doesn't change anything," he said finally. Amelia froze. The room seemed to tilt slightly. "What does that mean?" Lucas's voice remained calm, detached. "It means your marriage was already broken before I was involved." The truth. Simple, unforgiving. Amelia let out a small disbelieving laugh. "Wow," she murmured. "That's convenient." "I'm not trying to be cruel," he said. "I'm being honest." She closed her eyes, and for the first time honesty felt unbearable. "You should focus on what you want now," Lucas continued, "not what's already over." Amelia's grip on the phone tightened. "What I want," she repeated softly. But the question echoed back at her, empty. Because suddenly she wasn't sure anymore. Not about Nathan, not about Lucas, not even about herself. "I have to go," she said abruptly, ending the call before he could respond. The silence returned instantly, heavier this time, more real. Amelia stood alone in the center of the apartment, the note still lying on the counter behind her. Nathan's words lingered in the air. Not loud, not dramatic, but impossible to ignore. "I think you have too." Her chest tightened, because now she understood. This wasn't just about being caught. It was about being seen. And for the first time, Amelia didn't like what she saw. Nathan didn't check into a hotel. Not immediately. Instead, he drove. The city thinned behind him as the early morning light stretched across wet pavement, turning Seattle's gray into something almost silver. The roads were quiet, too early for traffic, too late for night. His hands rested steadily on the steering wheel. No music, no calls, just the low hum of the engine and the sound of something inside him finally settling into place. He wasn't running. That was the part people would misunderstand. He wasn't escaping anything. He had already been living with it. Months earlier, before the late nights became routine, before the silence between them felt permanent, there had been a moment, small, almost insignificant. Amelia's phone lighting up on the kitchen counter. She had stepped into the other room, something about a quick call, something about work. Nathan hadn't meant to look. He truly hadn't. But the screen lit up again, and this time he saw it. Lucas. No last name, no explanation, just a message that appeared too easily, too naturally. "Last night was different. I can't stop thinking about you." Nathan didn't touch the phone, didn't unlock it, didn't scroll. He didn't need to. The message disappeared seconds later, but it didn't matter. The damage wasn't in the words. It was in what they confirmed. Back in the present, Nathan tightened his grip on the wheel slightly, not out of anger, but out of memory. He remembered exactly how he felt in that moment. Not shock, not even betrayal. Recognition. Because something inside him had already known. The distance, the way Amelia laughed at her phone but not at him, the subtle shift in her tone lighter when she wasn't talking to him. He had felt it long before he saw it. The message had just given it a name. Nathan didn't confront her. That was the part he replayed sometimes, not with regret, but with clarity. He could have asked, could have demanded answers, could have forced the truth into the open. But what would that have changed? Truth, when dragged out under pressure, rarely arrives clean. It comes twisted, defensive, shaped by fear and guilt. Nathan didn't want that version of it. He wanted to see what was real, without interference, without performance. So he said nothing. At first it felt like control, like strength. But over time it became something else. Distance. He started noticing everything. Not obsessively, not in a way that consumed him, but quietly, consistently. Patterns. Late nights that didn't match her calendar, messages she smiled at but never mentioned. The way she held her phone just slightly angled away from him. Small things, but together they told a complete story. Nathan never followed her, never checked her phone, never tried to catch her, because he didn't need proof. He needed understanding. And slowly he got it. Back in the present, his car slowed as he pulled into a quiet overlook just outside the city. The skyline stretched in the distance, softened by morning haze. He turned off the engine, sat there, still. Another memory surfaced. 3 months ago, a Thursday night. Amelia had come home late again, past midnight. Nathan had been sitting in the living room, the TV on, but muted. He looked up as she walked in. "You're still up?" she asked, her tone light, almost casual. He nodded. "Yeah." A pause. "You didn't text," he added, not accusing, just stating. She shrugged, slipping off her heels. It was busy. Nathan watched her for a moment, studied her. There had been something different about her that night. Not obvious, but undeniable. A softness, a glow, something alive. It wasn't for him. That was the moment it became real. Not the message, not the suspicion. That. Seeing her come home carrying something emotional that had nothing to do with him. Back in the present, Nathan leaned back in his seat, exhaling slowly. That night he hadn't argued, hadn't questioned. He simply said okay, and turned the TV off. That okay had meant more than she understood. It wasn't agreement, it wasn't acceptance. It was release, because in that moment Nathan realized something he hadn't been ready to admit before. She wasn't choosing between two people. She had already chosen, and it wasn't him. The affair wasn't the betrayal. The absence was. The emotional space where he used to exist. That's what had been replaced. And once that space is gone, there's nothing left to fight for. Nathan closed his eyes briefly. People imagine betrayal as something loud, explosive, full of confrontation and chaos. But the truth, the real truth, is often quiet. It's in the moments where someone stops trying, stops reaching, stops seeing you. And by the time you notice, they're already gone. Nathan opened his eyes again, staring out at the distant city. That was why he didn't leave in anger. Anger implies something sudden, something reactive. But this had been happening slowly, for months. He had just been the last one to walk away. Back at the apartment, Amelia was probably reading the note again, trying to understand it, trying to find the moment where everything broke. But Nathan knew the truth. There wasn't one moment. There were hundreds, small ones, quiet ones, ignored ones, until one day there was nothing left. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, looked at it for a long moment. No messages, no calls. He didn't expect any. Then without hesitation he turned it off. Not out of anger, but because there was nothing left he needed to hear. The silence now felt earned, and for the first time in a long time it didn't feel heavy. It felt clear. Nathan stepped out of the car, the morning air cool against his skin. The city stood behind him. Familiar. Distant. And ahead there was nothing defined, no plan, no certainty, just space. And somehow that was enough. The apartment didn't feel like hers anymore. It felt like something abandoned. Amelia hadn't slept. The note still lay on the kitchen counter, untouched now, but not forgotten. It lingered in the air, in every corner, in every reflection she tried to avoid. By mid-morning the silence had become unbearable, so she moved. First she called him, once, twice, 3 times, straight to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. What would she even say? Come back, explain yourself, explain me. Amelia lowered the phone slowly, her hand trembling just enough for her to notice. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. There was supposed to be a conversation, a fight, tears, something that gave her a chance to respond. But Nathan hadn't given her that. He had removed himself from the equation entirely. And now she was left alone with the truth? No, she whispered, shaking her head as she grabbed her coat. No, I'm not doing this alone. The city outside felt louder than usual, or maybe it was just her. Every sound sharper, every movement faster, like the world had accelerated while she was still trying to catch up. She drove without thinking, not home, not work, to Lucas. His office building stood tall in downtown Seattle, glass and steel, clean and imposing. The kind of place that projected controlled success, certainty, everything Amelia thought she had. She walked in without hesitation, past the receptionist, past the polite resistance, I need to see him, she said, her voice firm enough to cut through any protocol. Minutes later, she was standing in his office. Lucas Grant looked up from behind his desk, surprised but not unsettled. He never looked unsettled. "Amelia," he said calmly, setting his pen down, "you should have called." "I did." "A beat?" He nodded slightly, as if acknowledging something minor. "I've been in meetings." Of course, meetings, always something more important. Amelia let out a short breathless laugh. "Right, of course you have." Lucas studied her now more carefully. Her disheveled hair, her tired eyes, the tension she wasn't even trying to hide. "You don't look okay," he said. "I'm not." The honesty surprised even her. A silence settled between them, but unlike before, this one felt different, colder. "He's gone," Amelia said, her voice steadier now. "Nathan, he left." Lucas leaned back slightly in his chair. "And you didn't expect that?" The question landed like a slap. "I didn't expect him to just disappear," she shot back. "No conversation, no warning, just gone." Lucas exhaled slowly. That sounds like a decision he's been thinking about for a while. Amelia stared at him. Something inside her shifted. Again. "That's it?" she asked quietly. "That's all you're going to say?" "What do you want me to say?" Lucas replied, his tone even. "That I'm surprised, that I didn't see this coming." Her chest tightened. "You said you cared about me." "I do." The answer came too easily, too smoothly. "Then why does it feel like this doesn't matter to you at all?" she demanded, her voice rising slightly. Lucas didn't react to the volume, didn't flinch, didn't move. Because he said carefully, this was never about replacing your husband. The words hung in the air, heavy, precise. Amelia blinked. "I didn't say it was." "You didn't have to." Another pause, longer this time. Lucas leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the desk. "What we had," he began, then corrected himself. "What we have was separate from your marriage." Amelia felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Separate," she repeated. "Yes. So what does that make me?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Lucas didn't answer immediately. And in that hesitation, Amelia found her answer. A distraction, she continued. An escape, something convenient. "That's not fair," Lucas said, though his tone lacked conviction. "Then what is it?" she pressed. Another silence. And then something that worked, as long as it stayed where it belonged. The truth. Stripped down, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Amelia let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Wow!" She stepped back slightly, as if needing physical distance from him now. "All this time," she said, shaking her head, "I thought..." She stopped herself. Because finishing that sentence would mean admitting something she wasn't ready to face. Lucas watched her carefully. "You thought it was more. It wasn't a question." Amelia looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time, he didn't seem complex, or mysterious, or understanding. Just simple, predictable. And suddenly, everything they had felt smaller. "You asked me if I was happy," she said slowly. "I remember. You made me believe you cared about the answer." "I did." "No," Amelia shook her head. "You cared about how it made me feel, in the moment." Lucas didn't argue, because he couldn't. That silence, it confirmed everything. Amelia's chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't confusion, it was clarity. "I lost my husband," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas didn't respond. "And for what?" Still nothing. That was the answer. Amelia nodded slowly, not in agreement, but in understanding. "This wasn't real," she said. Lucas looked at her, but didn't deny it, because he couldn't. Amelia turned toward the door. "Amelia," he called after her. She paused, but didn't turn around. "You'll be okay," he said. The words felt empty, meaningless. She let out a quiet breath. Then finally she spoke. "No," she said softly, "I won't." And this time she knew it was true. She walked out of his office without looking back. Outside, the city felt different. Not louder, not faster. Just clearer. People passed by her without noticing. Cars moved. Conversations continued. Life went on. But Amelia stood still for a moment on the sidewalk, her world no longer aligned with any of it. Her phone buzzed in her hand. For a second, hope flickered. She looked down. A notification from work. Missed deadlines. Urgent meetings. Questions. Consequences. Of course, because this wasn't just personal. Her focus had slipped. Her performance had changed. People had noticed. The cracks weren't just in her marriage. They were everywhere. Amelia closed her eyes briefly, the weight of everything pressing down at once. Nathan was gone. Lucas was never real. And the life she thought she controlled was unraveling faster than she could hold it together. For the first time, there was no one left to blame. Only herself. And the silence that followed. It took her 3 days to find him. Not because he was hiding, but because Nathan Cole had quietly removed himself from every place she thought to look. He hadn't gone to work, hadn't contacted mutual friends, hadn't checked into any hotel she could trace. It was as if he had erased his presence from her world. until one message appeared, short, simple, from an unknown number. If you need closure, I'll be at Pier 62, tomorrow, 7 p.m. No name, no explanation, but she knew. The next evening, Seattle was wrapped in its familiar gray. The water stretched endlessly beneath a low sky, the air cool, almost still. Amelia arrived early. Of course she did. She stood near the railing, arms wrapped tightly around herself, eyes fixed on the horizon but seeing nothing. Her thoughts moved in circles. What to say, how to start, how to explain something that no longer had a clean explanation. Footsteps approached behind her, measured, unhurried. She knew before she turned. Minutes later, she was standing in his office. Lucas Grant looked up from behind his desk, surprised but not unsettled. He never looked unsettled. "Amelia," he said calmly, setting his pen down. "You should have called." "I did." A beat. He nodded slightly, as if acknowledging something minor. "I've been in meetings." Of course, meetings. Always something more important. Amelia let out a short breathless laugh. "Right, of course you have." Lucas studied her now more carefully. Her disheveled hair, her tired eyes, the tension she wasn't even trying to hide. "You don't look okay," he said. "I'm not." The honesty surprised even her. A silence settled between them, but unlike before, this one felt different, colder. "He's gone," Amelia said, her voice steadier now. "Nathan, he left." Lucas leaned back slightly in his chair. "And you didn't expect that?" The question landed like a slap. "I didn't expect him to just disappear," she shot back. "No conversation, no warning, just gone." Lucas exhaled slowly. "That sounds like a decision he's been thinking about for a while." Amelia stared at him. Something inside her shifted. Again. "That's it?" she asked quietly. "That's all you're going to say?" "What do you want me to say?" Lucas replied, his tone even. "That I'm surprised, that I didn't see this coming." Her chest tightened. "You said you cared about me." "I do." The answer came too easily, too smoothly. "Then why does it feel like this doesn't matter to you at all?" she demanded, her voice rising slightly. Lucas didn't react to the volume, didn't flinch, didn't move. Because he said carefully, "This was never about replacing your husband." The words hung in the air, heavy, precise. Amelia blinked. "I didn't say it was." "You didn't have to." Another pause, longer this time. Lucas leaned forward slightly, resting his hands on the desk. "What we had," he began, then corrected himself. "What we have was separate from your marriage." Amelia felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Separate," she repeated. "Yes." "So what does that make me?" she asked, her voice quieter now. Lucas didn't answer immediately, and in that hesitation Amelia found her answer. "A distraction," she continued. "An escape, something convenient." "That's not fair," Lucas said, though his tone lacked conviction. "Then what is it?" she pressed. Another silence. And then something that worked, as long as it stayed where it belonged. The truth, stripped down, uncomfortable, unavoidable. Amelia let out a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Wow!" She stepped back slightly, as if needing physical distance from him now. "All this time," she said, shaking her head, "I thought..." She stopped herself, because finishing that sentence would mean admitting something she wasn't ready to face. Lucas watched her carefully. "You thought it was more. It wasn't a question." Amelia looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time he didn't seem complex, or mysterious, or understanding. Just simple, predictable. And suddenly everything they had felt smaller. "You asked me if I was happy," she said slowly. "I remember. You made me believe you cared about the answer." "I did." "No," Amelia shook her head. "You cared about how it made me feel, in the moment." Lucas didn't argue, because he couldn't. That silence, it confirmed everything. Amelia's chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't confusion, it was clarity. "I lost my husband," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas didn't respond. "And for what?" "Still nothing." That was the answer. Amelia nodded slowly, not in agreement, but in understanding. "This wasn't real," she said. Lucas looked at her, but didn't deny it, because he couldn't. Amelia turned toward the door. "Amelia," he called after her. She paused, but didn't turn around. "You'll be okay," he said. The words felt empty, meaningless. She let out a quiet breath. Then finally, she spoke. "No," she said softly, "I won't." And this time, she knew it was true. She walked out of his office without looking back. Outside, the city felt different. Not louder, not faster. Just clearer. People passed by her without noticing. Cars moved. Conversations continued. Life went on. But Amelia stood still for a moment on the sidewalk, her world no longer aligned with any of it. Her phone buzzed in her hand. For a second, hope flickered. She looked down. A notification from work, missed deadlines, urgent meetings, questions, consequences. Of course, because this wasn't just personal. Her focus had slipped. Her performance had changed. People had noticed. The cracks weren't just in her marriage. They were everywhere. Amelia closed her eyes briefly, the weight of everything pressing down at once. Nathan was gone. Lucas was never real. And the life she thought she controlled was unraveling faster than she could hold it together. For the first time, there was no one left to blame, only herself. And the silence that followed, it took her 3 days to find him, not because he was hiding, but because Nathan Cole had quietly removed himself from every place she thought to look. He hadn't gone to work, hadn't contacted mutual friends, hadn't checked into any hotel she could trace. It was as if he had erased his presence from her world, until one message appeared, short, simple, from an unknown number. "If you need closure, I'll be at Pier 62, tomorrow, 7 p.m. No name, no explanation, but she knew. The next evening, Seattle was wrapped in its familiar grey. The water stretched endlessly beneath a low sky, the air cool, almost still. Amelia arrived early. Of course she did. She stood near the railing, arms wrapped tightly around herself, eyes fixed on the horizon, but seeing nothing. Her thoughts moved in circles. What to say, how to start, how to explain something that no longer had a clean explanation. Footsteps approached behind her, measured, unhurried. She knew before she turned. Permanent. Amelia moved through her days carefully, deliberately, like someone learning how to exist inside a life that no longer fit. Work had become complicated. Missed deadlines, forgotten meetings, subtle glances from colleagues that lingered just a second too long. Her manager had called her in a week ago. "Is everything okay, Amelia?" A simple question. Professional, polite. She had nodded, of course. Another lie. But this time it felt heavier, because there was no one left to believe it. Lucas hadn't called, not once. At first she noticed, then she understood. What they had shared didn't exist outside the moments they created it in, and now those moments were gone. So was he. Amelia stood by the window, staring out at the city below. Her reflection stared back at her, familiar, but different. There was no performance left now, no version of herself to maintain, no illusion to protect. Just truth. And the truth was quiet. Across the city, Nathan Cole had built something simpler. A small apartment, minimal, unfinished in places, but real. There were no carefully curated details, no attempt to impress, no need to present anything other than what it was. He had returned to work, slowly, on his terms. Colleagues noticed the change, not dramatically, but subtly. He spoke less, but when he did, it mattered. There was a steadiness to him now, not cold, not detached. Just clear. Nathan didn't talk about Amelia, not because he was hiding anything, but because there was nothing left to explain. Some endings don't need to be shared, they just exist. One evening he sat by his window, a cup of coffee in hand. The city stretched out before him, familiar but no longer defining. He thought about her, of course he did. Not with anger, not with regret, but with understanding. What they had was real, at one point. It just didn't survive what they became. Nathan exhaled slowly, setting the cup down. There was no urge to reach out, no unfinished sentence lingering in his mind. Just space. And in that space he found something unexpected. Peace. Back in the apartment they once shared, Amelia stood in the doorway of the bedroom. She hadn't changed much, not physically. But something in her eyes had shifted. The certainty was gone. In its place was awareness. She walked to the closet, opened it. Nathan's side remained empty, untouched. Not because she couldn't move on, but because she wasn't ready to erase what it meant. Her phone buzzed softly behind her. She turned, looked at it. Another message from work, another reminder, another consequence. Amelia picked it up. This time she didn't ignore it. Because there was no one left to distract her from what mattered. No one left to absorb the parts of her she didn't want to face. Only herself. She walked back into the living room, her eyes landing on the kitchen counter. The note was still there, folded carefully. She had thought about throwing it away, many times. But she never did. Because it wasn't just a goodbye. It was a mirror. A quiet, unchanging reflection of everything she had avoided. Amelia picked it up again, opened it, read it, not searching for something new, just understanding it differently now. "I think you have too." Her chest tightened, but this time she didn't look away. Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft, endless. Life continued. Nathan moved forward, not quickly, not dramatically, but honestly. Amelia stayed where she was, not because she couldn't leave, but because she had to learn how to. And sometimes that takes longer. The city remained unchanged. But inside two separate lives, everything had already been rewritten. No reconciliation, no second chances, just distance. And the quiet understanding that some endings don't come with closure, only silence. And what remains after?